Welcome into the Blue White Tailgate Podcast, post-game edition. Mike Gross, the Gross Rational Product, Frank Bonanni, the York Daily Record, and Andrew Calista here. And gentlemen, normally when we do these post-game, when we're at Beaver Stadium, we're high above, and we do them immediately right after the game when we get done talking to the guys and Coach James Franklin. Post-UCLA, 42-37. Penn State made it a game. I'll start with drawing on the positives. They made it a game. They had a chance, but it didn't look like that in the first half. Kind of laugh as I say it. A lot of things to digest here. That's why we're coming to you a little bit later after this road game that we did not travel to for certain reasons. It was a 26-point favorite, Penn State. Guys, well, I mean, this is bad. For me, this is the worst loss since we talked about it during the week, 1995, Penn State, Wisconsin. This is the worst loss in 30 years for Penn State, in my opinion. And that includes 1999 Minnesota.
Well, 1999 is bad, okay, because they were number 2 in the country playing an unranked team and Penn State just had to win a couple games and they're playing for the national title. So I think to me, this goes probably back to that. I mean, that loss is still crushing 25 years later to people.
Minnesota had a pulse, though, and Glenn Mason was a very good football coach. UCLA had you, me, and Dupree on their sidelines today.
If Penn State's ranked number 2 in November and loses to this team, yeah, but the problem is that there is some type of a complete disconnect on who we thought Penn State was and who they are. Now, we're 5 weeks in and only a couple of real tests. So, I mean, it's a huge disconnect. I'd never seen maybe a disconnect like this before.
Mike,
30 years.
Mike, how do you make this? Because, I mean, this is James Franklin said at media days. This is the best team he's had. This is the top to bottom, the advantages. Everything's in place. Perfect alignment. I mean, if it was for sale, James was selling it.
Yeah, and it's not crazy that he was selling it. He was not selling it based on nothing. I mean, this should be a good team. What they did defensively today was just beyond my comprehension. I just could not believe how bad they were defensively. I mean, even compared to last week, where they were pretty good defensively against what we all think is one of the best teams in the country. And the other piece of it is that UCLA was in such upheaval. They didn't know who their offensive coordinator. They fired their offensive coordinator on Tuesday when the game plan ought to be already in, and you ought to be getting ready. I mean, they didn't know. So Penn State didn't have any idea what they were going to do, and all of that upheaval in UCLA's program seemed to work in UCLA's favor. It's just. This was astonishing. I mean, it depends on how your perspective and how you look at it. But that game with Minnesota back in the 90s, I mean, they didn't play as badly, I don't think, in that game. That just was a gut punching the way it ended. But this was just astonishing.
Yeah, I mean. Yeah. I don't know how UCLA was 0-4 with this quarterback unless this quarterback decided not to play the first 4 games like he did today. He was tough. He was hard to handle. The biggest problem I have with Penn State's defense is just lack of adjustment. I mean, if you get caught by surprise, you're down, you're traveling 3,000 miles away, you start slow, fine, whatever. But when it finally seemed like they were back in the game, they still couldn't stop the kid. Yeah. I mean, Jim Knowles is the highest paid coordinator in college football history. Tony Rojas or no Tony Rojas, they have no answers. Yeah. And I don't even know how to explain that combination at this point. This is not a no-talent defense by any means.
Yeah, and to be clear, I don't think for people that are going to jump into comments, and I know you like to highlight one specific thing when you're making a comment, Mike Gross is not making an excuse saying UCLA had all the advantages based on all the upheaval. That works for a little bit of a spark normally in this situation. Frank Bodani is not saying,
No.
Penn State lost Tony Rojas. And that's a reason for an excuse. Penn State was outplayed. They looked lackluster. They were lazy. They looked unprepared. Whatever that was at the end of the second quarter with clock management, you're down by multiple scores. Score. Don't worry about scoring with no time on the clock. I mean, there's just like if they could have dumped a roadblock in front of them, they dumped it in themselves.
They had the 2-minute timeout, and they had 2 timeouts of their own, and they end up running 4 plays, and UCLA ends up kicking a field goal to end the half. I mean, and then there's so many things. That goofy, unsportsmanlike penalty on Khalil Dinkins, Zane Durant jumping blatantly off sides on 4th and 1. Was he trying to anticipate the snap? Letting the punter dance around in the end zone for 8 seconds before taking an intentional safety. And then Penn State has, 12 seconds left? And the first throw is a check down to Nick Singleton behind the line of scrimmage for no yards.
Hey, but Drew Aller looked composed on that throw and the throwaway.
Honestly, I thought Drew Aller played pretty well. I thought he was a relative bright spot in this mess.
You're doing good at finding them.
Yeah. I mean, I wrote about how everybody wants him fired. James Franklin fired. He's not getting fired. He's got a $50 million buyout. He's had 11 years of relative success. He's not getting fired after one horrendous game. They're not paying $50 million to fire him next week.
Well, he's not getting fired during the season.
So my point is that we're 5 games in. We got 7 to go. He's had recoveries of some fashion in the past. You're going to have to be, if you're a Penn State fan, you're going to have to sit back and you're going to have to suck it up and you're going to have to see what they can do for 7 games, because you can scream about how you hate the man and don't want him as your coach, but it's not going to change right now. So they still have talent. They still have at least the makings of a decent team. To me, they got to try to, what can they find in themselves? How do you motivate this group that's there to take the first step back against Northwestern and at least try to salvage what you can? I mean, they did it in some degrees in the past. I mean, people wanted him fired in 2016 in the middle of the Minnesota game. And when they beat Minnesota, people around were saying, who cares? It was Minnesota, for God's sakes. Well, I mean, there's still, I hate to say there's hope, I guess, but I mean, this is still a much more talented team than what it is looking like at the moment. I think you got to see what happens.
I talked to some people close to Letterman, ones that played for James Franklin. The word peaked was used in the text message. That was said to me by a couple other Lettermen. Like, that's not a good sign. Peaked is not a good sign if you're a Penn State fan. If your Lettermen are saying that, ones that played for James Franklin, one that played for Joe Paterno, ones that played for Joe Paterno, I should say, not a good sign. Diehard James Franklin supporters that I know that would always needle me as I was Mr. Negativity for 15 years officially on the beat, texting me, we're done. This is it. This is the last of the money. My question is James Franklin Penn State's head coach next year? Because he could leave for a low buyout. He could leave on his own. And that's a possibility, in my opinion.
I just don't think we know that yet. Like, to say that you know that right now, I think you don't know that.
But it's getting harder and harder to imagine that this thing hasn't run its course. That's how it feels to me. I'll be honest with you. That's how it feels to me. I would, if I had to bet one way or another who's going to be the coach on opening day of next season, I would bet against it being James Franklin at this point.
Wow.
And yeah, I would. I mean, I don't see and you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of Andy Reid at the end of his tenure with the Eagles. where it had just run its course. They were done with each other. And Andy Reid is a great football coach, a Hall of Famer, but that situation was over. They had gotten to a plateau and not gotten past it. And they had not broken through, and the time was long enough. And this is, 12 years is a long time in big time sports for one coach without the breakthrough, without the threshold. Who knows what's going to happen? This is going to be a wild ride the rest of this season, and I don't think this is. I'm not relishing throwing Franklin out of here at all, but I don't know. I can't. It's hard. Mm-hmm. It's harder and harder for me to imagine this lasting going into the future.
Well, it may not. The interesting thing about this whole Pete thing, though, is here's the thing. He has more talent, depth, and experience this year than he ever has had. Plus, he has more university alignment and backing than he's ever had. So to say that it's peaked, I don't think the situation is peaked. So you think that James Franklin suddenly has forgotten how to coach? Because he did pretty well in the past with a lot less than what I just said. So I don't understand. Maybe I don't know what the reason is for why they're playing like this overall. But in a lot of ways, he has more advantages now going for him than he's ever had. Yeah. So how do you not win with that? Like, what's
right. That's all of what you just said, Frank. I think makes today all the more inexplicable.
Right. This is, I think, for the fan base's perspective, is they get tired of like repeating and Groundhog Day, not just with losing the good teams. That's a really frustrating thing. But you lost to Ohio State. A big reason was an unsportsmanlike foul. And yet you had an unsportsmanlike foul today when you couldn't afford it. So it's either being allowed to take place or what? Like, it's happening multiple times. Address the issue. And I know they're two different guys. I know it's a different year. But you can't have that. The team has to be self-aware. And if they're not self-aware, that comes down on the coaching staff. And if the coaching staff ain't self-aware, that comes down on the head coach, the CEO of the program, and that's James Franklin. And for me, this has all the makings of a page 6 New York socialite heiress divorce. And it being nasty. And that's what it feels like to me. It really does. I'm at a loss of words to explain it. I don't really know how against a bad football team, and UCLA is a bad football team. I said it. I feel like I've, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. I bought into the 12-0. I was always a negative person, 9-3, 9-3, 10-2. I bought into the 12-0 this year, and I feel hoodwinked. I do. I bought into the Penn State hype. We have the best running backs in the country. Our offensive line coming back. There are certain things that are not explainable that are happening in this program right now. And the defense is one of them. It should not happening. I get the defense only gave up 17 points last week. There's no reason.
The defense this
was terrible
for the defense.
It was an embarrassing performance. I think if we had Jim Knowles available, Jim Knowles would call that performance embarrassing. He'd call his own performance embarrassing. He didn't come here and forget how to coach football. So that team was uninspired. Another word that was thrown around to me in text message today was lost locker room from former players.
Well,
how do they know that?
I don't buy that. That I got a problem with.
Yep, I'm just relaying the
other thing is,
I know. Yeah.
But the other thing is, so when you have all this, what we got to try to understand is like, what is causing this? Because none of it really makes sense to this degree. Mm-hmm. Like, they got seemingly the core group of players that were within a few plays of playing for the national title last year. I mean, not much has changed. If anything, they did what they could to make themselves better. There doesn't seem to be malcontents on the team. I mean, not that they've had a lot in the past, but I don't hear anything about that. I mean, I haven't heard message board people or anybody saying that they've got, behavior issues on the team.
No,
So what?
And this is a week after the Oregon game in which they lost in double overtime to one of the best teams in the country. So if he's lost the locker room, that to me is on the players more than it's on Franklin, because they're not a very mentally tough group of people.
Yeah, it's a valid point.
Right.
It is. If you can't be fired up,
I don't really buy that.
But it's the same guys that
people
were there last year. So who did they lose from last year's team that made all the leadership locker room difference in the world?
Yeah, right.
Abdul Carter? Are you kidding me?
Not a leader. Tyler Warren, I don't think, maybe to some extent a leader,
by example,
but not to explain this. And then you got. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Andrew.
Why does Penn State? Let's just address one of the main issues. Why did they look so disorganized at times during key moments? The end of the game, and we've seen it. We've seen it in the past. Chase Young in 2018. Let's run the ball at Chase Young on 4th and 5, 4th and 6 at Beaver Stadium. Let's take the ball out of Trace McSorley's hand in the game in the Capital One Bowl against Kentucky. Let's only give Saquon Barkley one touch in 2017 at Ohio State down in the red zone when you had a chance to throw the haymaker and knock out Ohio State. Instead, Penn State settled for a field goal. They score a touchdown there, the game's over for the most part.
Well, that stuff to me is all a little different than today.
Well, it's all different.
Today was being organized.
It comes back to 4th and 2. 4th and 2 today. That call was reminiscent at the end of the game. And there's that I'm trying to get to the end of the game and then the end of the half. And those to me are key moments. And I guess the whole game is key when you're getting, your defense is getting its doors kicked in and you got to come back. But at the end of the first half, that was a must-score possession. I don't know what Penn State was doing. I don't know the whole object of what was going on. And the interview on the field doesn't jive. And then
management and game management were bad today in addition to.
And 4th and 2 was atrocious. That cannot be a call. That cannot be the call. It was Drew Aller is the Statue of Liberty in the Ghostbusters movie. That cannot be the call in life and death.
It's an excellent popular culture reference, big guy.
Well, I agree. I kind of, if there's anything, is maybe the play calling and the way the offense is operated is kind of stunningly strange to me, considering who's the guy leading it and what kind of reputation he came in and how it looked for a lot of last year. I don't understand that play call. I don't understand, Andrew, like you said, the purpose of the end of the first half. And I mean, we're still looking. Honestly, I'll say it. You're still looking for wide receivers who can make a difference, and I can't understand how Penn State seemingly is going through the wide receiver coaches and special team coaches that they've had the past 5 years when they spend all this money and have all these supposedly really good hires elsewhere. They seem to be black holes for me if you're gonna drill down on it on the position groups. But because
I mean that's
Frank,
fair.
I'll ask both you guys this question. If Pat Kraft said to James Franklin on the plane, changes need to be made. James Franklin is looking at staff. Is anybody, whether they get fired midseason or not, is anybody on the hot seat? Andy Kotelnicki. I have him on the hot seat. I do.
Well, I don't think in the middle of the season. You mean during the season?
It could be during the season, depending on how the wheels come off or stay on. Special teams coordinator, and you have to look at the wide receiver coach. I mean, you have to. I don't know what.
Well, that's the one area. That's the one area where James has been pretty good at hiring and firing people, and that's the one exception to that has been kind of ongoing.
Are all three of those guys on the hot seat right now?
I think you got to have a couple more. I don't know if they're ready to fire anybody right at the moment. I mean, I think.
I mean, what if they, what if they win the next 4 in a row? I mean, I think that's pretty unlikely, but what if they win the next 4 in a row?
Well, then we have a different conversation to some degree. We have to wait. I guess my point, what I started off with, is you hate to keep saying this too, but I think you do. The situation is so unexpected and so out of the realm of what, to me, I would think, that I kind of have to see a little more here before I'm ready to make bold proclamations in the middle of the season, because you're going to start firing people in week 5. I'm not sure where that leads you. What does that do for you at this moment? How does that spark?
That's right. That's kind of what I was saying. That's kind of what I was saying. But I think that I mean, if you're talking about who's on the hot seat, I think Franklin is now on the hot seat, and so therefore his staff is on the hot seat. I mean, so that flows from him, and that more than picking out a specific guy on the staff, in my mind.
Right. It's the dynamic around Penn State right now. It's so unique. It's hard really to wrap your head around what is going on with this Nittany Lion.
It really is
squad.
Crazy.
It really is.
This was astonishing to me today. I can't believe, as Jack Bucks once said, I can't believe what I just saw.
Monday's press conference will be interesting. You guys are always one of the top 3 questions to go. Godspeed on coming up with one on that. I guess we're going to wrap it up. I mean, there's so much to talk about and what ifs to go through that we could be here for 2.5 hours and still not solve all the problems with the Nittany Lions. But it's definitely an interesting dynamic. Wednesday's practice availability will be interesting, and we'll see. I mean, I think we'll see a lot of character, because some people, they'll kill me. We've seen Penn State characters. They're terrible, they're terrible, they're terrible. I think we'll see a lot of actually what kind of dog Penn State has in them Saturday in Beaver Stadium for homecoming against Northwestern. It's gut check. As you said, season could still go a lot of ways, but right now Penn State appears to be in a free fall.
It appears to be in a free fall, and there are one more thing. I just kind of thought of this. There's a lot of veteran guys on this team, and some of them, quite a few of them, are probably going to be in the NFL next year. So at a certain point, a guy like that starts thinking about what's next instead of want to know this week. That happens. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but that happens.
Yeah. And real quick side point, something was said on the CBS broadcast regarding Tony Rojas, or not said, but maybe implied. Nobody here believes that Tony Rojas is injured. There is not, watching the broadcast, if Penn State fans are thinking Tony Rojas, quote, opted out, that is not true from everything that we know. I saw him get banged up in the game against Oregon. I'm not even sure his injury 100% happened at practice. Something may have happened in the game, and then whatever took place at practice was more so.
It surprised me that Gary Danielson, who I like, who I think is pretty good and has been doing this forever and have been around the game forever, would have worded that the way he did without making clear that, hey, I'm just speculating. He that was surprising to me. Yeah.
Just wanted to point that out here as we wrap up. Frank, any closing thoughts?
No, I can't wait till James, see how James avoids all of our questions on Monday. But
that is something to look forward
to. I mean, if you were him, would you not have? I mean, you're going to have to try to avoid them. I mean, what are you going to say? Throw your team under the bus?
It's going to be a lot of fun.
Here we go. We've moved on from Indiana. I'm done talking about Indiana. A famous coach, Bill O'Brien, once said. And they went on a Hail Mary the next week.
There you go.
So, all right, guys. For Frank Bonanni, Mike Gross, Andrew Clista, Blue White Tailgate Podcast, make sure you follow. Thanks for all the comments and follows last week after the Oregon game. Try to do these every single week. Have a good night.